The John Daversa Podcast.
Getting permission to say no. And I think that's even heavier for women because a lot of times we aren't taught that we can say no. Um, and sometimes I've been guilty as a young player to say, oh, I don't want to do this gig, and just complain. And then I say, well, then why are you doing it? Like, you're blocking someone else's blessing. They could be doing the gig and enjoying it and making the money. So it's like, even now I'll tell, you don't have to take every single gig. Let someone else reap the benefit of that as well.
This episode is with Doris Duke recipient, MacArthur Genius Grant Fellow, Multi-Grammy Nominee, incredible musician, Regina Carter. And I think you're going to be able to know her a little bit better. She talks about life and music, and her laugh is infectious. Enjoy this episode. Hello, Regina Carter.
Hey, John Daversa.
Thank you for being here. I'm really grateful to have this time with you, and to get to share a little bit about your world and your music and just you with our audience. I know you have so many people that admire your work and who you are and the integrity that you walk this earth with, including myself.
Thank you.
So, yes, absolutely. So, and we're going to do a concert tomorrow night together.
Yes,
So.
I'm excited about that. It was a great way to start the day with that rehearsal. I was like, okay, now I'm awake.
So, you know what I'm going to open with? As I told you, I don't have a plan. I actually want to ask you about your mom. Because you've mentioned her a few times in different ways, and even just reading about you a little bit and talking to you over the years, you've mentioned her in different ways, how she just seemed to be a force, and steering you in different places and giving you opportunities, and also being that guided hand to say, you really should think about doing it this way, even if you needed to rebel against it or you went along with it. So I'd love to hear you talk about your mom a little bit.
Yeah, my mom was definitely a force, Grace Carter. And it's so interesting when I think about her mother, because my maternal grandmother, Sarah, she was so sweet and so quiet and so gentle, and just, if she was upset with you, she might take her knuckles and like do it on your forehead like that. And that was
Wait, what?
she'd take her knuckles on your forehead. It could hurt,
Yeah.
But my mom, just when you would hear her coming, if you weren't doing what you were supposed to be doing, I knew her footsteps, and it was just like, oh, let me get it, because I just didn't want to hear it. But she was born in Detroit in 1926 in an area called Black Bottom. And in this area, it's Black Bottom, Paradise Valley, and a couple of other where blacks and immigrants lived. And some of the people, my mother's family was really poor, but there were doctors, lawyers, some of everyone. And black folks own their own businesses, the immigrants own their, and they survived, tight-knit communities. And then in 1956, the Highway Act was signed, and each city, if they wanted federal funding, had to deem certain neighborhoods as slums, even if they weren't slums, in order to receive money. And they built highways through these communities without without compensating them. And so people lost their homes, their churches, communities, everything. So my mom came through all of that, but I told you, my grandmother graduated from college in 1915, which was very rare for a woman and even rarer for a black woman.
And what university was that?
Morris Brown. And I have her degree with the original stamp
kidding.
at home. And so education was a big deal in my family. Music was a big deal. And my mom, even though she couldn't play music, I'd show her a couple of little chords, and she taught our students. She was a kindergarten teacher, and she would teach them a lot of their history and other subjects by way of music. So they would sing about it. And then, like, she took the wheels on the bus go round and round, and she told the whole story about Rosa Parks when she got on the bus. So each verse, and they would act it out. So they always remembered their lessons because they did it through music. And she wanted my brothers and I to take music lessons. We took dance lessons as well.
You started off dancing a little bit too, right?
I try. But yeah, so it just, my brothers, my one brother, they both stopped playing music. So the oldest one went into finance, and the other one is he's a stagehand, actually head stagehand at a Broadway theater in New York. So we're all kind of we're all in New York. But my mother was just a very, she didn't believe in no. And she would say, if you really want something, there's a way to get it. Ooh. And she also said, that's when you know if you really want it or not. Do you want to put that much work into this thing? And if not, then you don't really want it. Move on to the next thing. But if someone told her, no, your daughter, my first teacher told her, oh, your daughter won't be able to get in an orchestra. It'll be really difficult because she's Black. And my mother was like, that she wasn't even hearing that. Some kind of way it would have worked out. So because of that, and she was just very, very focused, very direct, made sure we had everything. And the way she taught us, she's still with me, like, very much so, a huge presence in my life.
So that one example of someone saying, well, you probably can't do that because you're Black and playing in an orchestra. First of all, I'm curious, how old would you have been when that was in your awareness?
Probably like 7 or 8.
And then, so I want to know how, if you can even remember what you thought of that. And then also having that strength of your mom as an example to say, no, she can do it if she really wants to do it. How do you put those together as a new human being?
I think because my mother was such a force, like, that's what I heard. But in my mind, I didn't want to be in the orchestra. I wanted to be the soloist in front of the orchestra. So
Yes,
I was like,
Yeah.
neither of you have to worry.
That's fantastic. That is fantastic.
Yeah, I remember my mom would take me to hear the Detroit Symphony Orchestra, and we'd sit up in the balcony, and I would always imagine myself, it's like I'm going to be in front of the orchestra one day, and
That's powerful.
yeah, and when I was in high school, I had another teacher. And we'd have master classes at the school once in a while. So we had master classes with Itzhak Perlman, and then we had one with Yehudi Menuhin.
Yeah.
And Yehudi came to hear the quartet I was in, and my teacher at the time said, "Oh, she's going to ruin her career. She wants to play jazz." And Yehudi Menuhin picked up his violin and played a blues lick and said, "Leave her alone." And I never forgot that. That was life changing. It's like, here's this master violinist who didn't see a difference. And at my age then, I didn't even know that people saw one music as being above another, but it was just, he got it.
Isn't that a beautiful reminder to us all in those positions, right? Because here you are now in that position. How one little moment like that can influence someone's life in a positive way or whatever, but it's an opportunity to really affect, if you see what the moment is, because it changed a trajectory for that moment, as you're saying. Wow, and then it's just a tremendous responsibility now in the seat that you sit on, because every time, like, we were in the rehearsal, right, and there were all these folks that heard Regina Carter was going to be here, so they all came into the rehearsal to listen, and you just never know, if you're going to say one thing or play one thing that just really lights them up in the right direction that they need to go in for their life.
Right. Yeah. We don't know. And a lot of times I don't think about. It's not something I think I wake up and think about. But what struck me today when I came on campus, because I took the Uber here, and then I'm just a brand new. I've never been here. It's a gorgeous campus. So I was like, let me put my bag down. I was just pulling my phone out to call you to say, okay, I'm here, but I have no clue where I'm going. And then I see this young man with a trombone case, and he just walks up and just big smile, introduces himself. And then there's a young lady that comes up, and usually, like, that's not how. Sometimes when I go to different schools and work with students, and sometimes it's the age where they're too cool for school, or they're mimicking, other jazz cats that they've
Yeah,
seen that.
sure.
So it was just, I was shocked and in a good way, and they just welcomed me, and that's just what I felt. And that comes from their leader, that comes from you. And yeah, and I think that's beautiful because the way they reached out to me, they're reaching out to others, and that's how their music, that's how they're
Yeah,
gonna.
that's it. That's it. Because they become the teachers of the teachers of the teachers of the teachers of those teachers, on and on and on. And hopefully it just becomes more and more refined with higher levels of awareness of what we're really looking at and what we're really trying to accomplish here
Yeah.
with music and being a human being. But thank you for
Amen.
sharing that. Yeah. So let me go back here then. So I'm curious. I've heard you talk about it a little bit before, but so that moment when you do decide, okay, that the jazz route is something I definitely want to explore as well. So what were those influences, and how did that come to you so strongly?
I didn't think about playing jazz on the violin. I just, I was learning my European classical repertoire. But when I grew up in the 60s and 70s, Motown, it's from Detroit. It was, and so all of those recordings had such great string parts and horn parts, and all the jazz cats in Detroit were playing on those records.
Right.
So I would learn all the string parts and stand in the mirror and play along, And I so it was just music. And I think because my first teacher, my
It was
Suzuki
just music.
teacher, she introduced, like, the way you learn Suzuki is by ear. It's the most natural way that we learn music, And she would play these games when we'd have a private lesson once a week, and then we'd all be together on Saturdays, all the students. And when she tapped you on, she'd make up a line. And when she tapped you, you had to continue. So it was like telephone tag. You're making up a tune. Um, so I wasn't afraid. I'm stronger off the paper than on the paper. So if I learn something by hearing it, I don't, I might look at the score just to see what else is happening. So it wasn't a big departure because I was already used to improvising and playing these string parts. But one of my best friends, Carla Cook, a wonderful jazz vocalist, we sat next to each other in Spanish class. She would always talk about Eddie Jefferson, Miles Davis, and Sarah Vaughan Ella, and she brought me 3 records: Jean-Luc Ponty, Noel Pointer, and Stephen Grappelli. And I put those records
Huh.
on, and I was like, "This is it."
Wow.
So I could switch. Just this is what
Yeah.
I'm doing.
Yeah. That's beautiful. You know what it was for me? I mean, I was already playing jazz when I was growing up, but the moment where it was like, that's what the way music is supposed to sound. We were just talking about is when I heard "The Shape of Jazz to Come,"
Wow.
and
Just
it's those synchronicities, right? Because people were you gotta check out Don Cherry. There's something like I think you just really I think there's just something that resonates. It's like yeah, I'll get there. And I finally, and that was the only Ornette record that was at the record store, so I bought that one.
that's so
And
funny. Yeah.
and I put it on, and just it was pure joy for however long the record is, 54 minutes or what. It's probably not that long.
Yeah. It's just
Um,
the A sign.
yeah, exactly. But everything made sense, and it was like, okay, that's what I want to do.
Yeah. We don't know. it's an interesting thing because with European classical music, depending on who you study with and what school, you might do Galamian or Sepshik or don't. You have book one, two, three, and then you learn this repertoire. So there's a system. Whereas in jazz, it's like you get dropped off in the middle of the forest and they say, find your way home. And it doesn't matter which way you go, you're going to get home. You just go and have the experiences. And I just, I kept, was like, where's the book one? You know, where's
Yeah.
the.
Yeah. You have to experience it.
Yeah. I remember the first Christmas when after discovering these three violinists, I told my mom I wanted some jazz records for Christmas. And I didn't know who to tell her. And she went to the store. So obviously whoever was at the record store, they picked their favorite records. So she came home with Miles's Bitches Brew, Ornette Coleman's Dancing in Your Head, and Eric Dolphy's Out to Lunch.
Come on.
And but I put those records on and I was like, oh no, if this is jazz, forget it.
Really?
I
That's
was like,
great.
never mind.
That's great. Circle back to that later. Yeah.
And so then I just kind of like found what I liked, but years later, I love those records.
Sure.
And I was actually glad I had that experience now looking back because my ears, I wasn't ready for that yet. That's like, I wasn't ready to hear that and to understand that and that's okay. Later on I was. And so some people, when they say, oh, I don't like jazz, and I say, okay, well, what have you heard?
Right.
What have you, and then I'll try to say, well, who do you like? What kind of music? I was like, check this person out or check this tune out by this person. Because sometimes it's just it's like, I don't like vegetables. Well, but try this one. You might like this,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. When you were saying that, I was just thinking, I remember when I was probably 15 or 16, I was listening to Miles Davis, but it was, the 4 Prestige records and Kind of Blue. And then when it got to 4 and More, like I knew it was incredible, but I couldn't quite understand it yet. And I said, I had the awareness to know that I was going to be able to come back to it later.
That's heavy. And at that age to know that.
Like I knew there was something there that was just so deep that I couldn't understand the vocabulary of it yet. But okay, I'll learn that language soon enough, but just not right now.
Yeah, well, but that's very mature because, so many people would have been like, okay, just that could have been a make it or break it,
Well, again, like that's my mom. That's my dad too, that they were that presence for me, always bringing musics in with no judgment, except for the ones that they had judgment with. Like they definitely said, "Oh, this, there's nothing there," and they were kind of right, But I mean, they were listening. I mean, it's from Willie Nelson to Motown to like Aretha to Chopin to like everything was there, and they would just marvel at it, and my dad was always there to like, come. I remember specifically. I remember he put on Sketches of Spain, and he knew I was there, and there was like a balcony, and I was kind of listening to the record player downstairs, and he just kind of breezes by, and he says, "Isn't that amazing how Miles can play low, and it's so impactful?" And he just kept walking, like that.
Wow,
that's my dad. Yeah,
that's heavy.
Yeah. So they were always there to kind of guide, and so I really admire people who look after the younger ones, because I feel so grateful to have had that.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. Yeah, my mom a lot of times would hear. She was just very fun. She was very frank, very direct, and sometimes I look at her and say, "You can't say that." But I had a gig with a group once, and I played the recording for her, and she said, "You get paid to play that?" Just like, oh my God. It's like, I get paid nicely, mom,
Mm-hmm.
just,
Mm-hmm.
but she didn't understand. And I wasn't going to try to, it was just to her, everybody has their thing, but she just was, you
I love it. I love it. And just to share that I think of my dad too. I remember I uh, I played. He was in town when I was in LA, and I played a rehearsal with a big band. And it was I think I didn't like the music in this big band, but it's one of those things. I said yes, I'll go do it, and the musicians were great, but I wasn't really into it. And he sat in on the rehearsal, and uh, and so I don't know what my body language was, but it must have been pretty bad, you know. Uh, and after the rehearsal, he said, son, if you're not going to enjoy the music, then don't do it. And that was like a big license for me. It was like, that's allowed,
yeah. Isn't it? Yeah.
because, and then I realized, yeah, I mean, if I'm not having, if I don't want to be there, then it's not a good influence. It's not a positive influence on everybody else that I'm around, and et cetera.
Right.
Um, so, I mean, they all come in different ways, right?
Yeah.
Even your mom saying,
Yeah.
you get paid for that.
Yeah.
and then that creates the opportunity for you to say, yeah, and I know why I'm there, because I want to be there for whatever the reasons are.
Yeah.
You can kind of stand in your integrity with it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a thing of knowing that you have getting permission to say no.
Mm.
And I think that's even heavier for women, because a lot of times
Yeah.
we aren't taught that we can say no.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. And sometimes I've been guilty as a young player to say, oh, I don't want to do this gig, and just complain, complain, complain. And then I say, well, then why are you doing it? Like, you're blocking someone else's blessing. They could be doing the gig and
I see.
enjoying it and making the money. So it's like, even now I'll tell, you don't have to take every single gig. Let someone else reap the benefit of that as
Yeah.
well. Because I think a lot of times musicians, because if we're just performing and that's what we do for our living, and we don't know when the next gig might happen, or when we get into this mind frame. Sometimes I got to take it because we don't know.
Lack.
Yeah, and we have to. That's dangerous. It's a dangerous place, because we can end up in situations where we're bitter,
Mm.
and that's not good for the music. But we have to have faith that we didn't get this far.
Yeah.
It's not going to just fall out. Although the pandemic felt like that, but it's not going to completely fall from underneath us.
Well, so I think we met a few years ago. I don't remember quite. It's probably more phone calls and
Yeah.
Zoom conversations and that kind of thing. But I mean, what really struck me as I got to know you, just working on these projects together, is that you are. It's really that beautiful combination of you're very generous with what you give to people and the music. Very generous and very sweet and very soft. Yet there's a very clear boundary with you. That I know what my integrity is. I do this and I don't do that. That's very clear. And when you're in the I do this, it's free. It's generous. It's giving. It's all of those things. And I said, okay. And that's what I really, you mentioned being a woman. That's really what I admire so much about women, is that they can embody that softness and that generosity and that just unconditional loving and giving, but also when you can stand in that integrity of knowing who you are and have those definitions. So I go here and I don't go there.
Yeah.
And that feels good. It's like you've got foundation and also the flow on top of it. In other words.
Yeah, and it's interesting, because I think some of that with the setting the boundaries came very late for me. Um, just because I didn't see many. Well, it's interesting. The way you learn things sometimes is not someone literally showing or teaching you. Sometimes it's by the way watching the way they behave or the way they react or don't react and what they tolerate. And so I think seeing what my mom would tolerate or what she wouldn't tolerate. Um, and she could be gentle with us, but she was all about business when she left her front door. Like she just very so I think I learned that late, but just even watching some of my mentors how they would handle certain situations. I remember seeing Kenny Bear and they were at Monterey one year and their plane the tent was packed and their flight kept getting delayed. And finally they came in and they were hungry. They didn't have time to go to the hotel and they just came straight. They played the most burning set and he didn't complain. And that was huge for me because I know there were times where I would have been like, no, I have to eat and I have to and it's no one cares. They pay their money to come and hear you and see you. They don't care about any of that. That's not their business. You're there to do. So that moment was a huge teaching moment for me.
Yes. Do you feel like you've had, beside your mom, mentors that were women that you could follow their example? Because this field is, I mean, there's a lot of men
Yeah.
doing all of this stuff, and especially in earlier generations, I would imagine you're having to set your own stage.
Yeah, most of my mentors were men. As I grew up in the music, I met more powerful women, and then I, formed a sisterhood with them, which I felt was really important. And then one thing I think because of the way I was treated and the way growing up in Detroit, Marcus Belgrave was one of my mentors as well. And he never treated me any differently than he treated the guys in the band. We were all his kids. And so because of the way he treated me and the respect, I didn't think about that until I got to New York. And then there were certain people there had their issues and they would disrespect me, maybe not because I was a woman, maybe because I played violin it was their issues. And I'd say, nope, not going back there.
Their issues.
Yeah. That I knew. It was like, I don't have to do that. I don't have to be on that gig. I don't have to, no, I can say no. So, and that just came from the way I was treated, like we're taught how to, and we teach others how to treat us.
Do you find yourself in that position now where you are showing your students on an anecdotal basis, here's what's going on? I'm sure there are some cases where they don't even know that they're being treated a certain way, and others where they do.
Yeah, I took it when Jerry Allen had a camp for young women, a jazz camp, and after she passed, I took it over for about, I think it was 5 years.
Yeah.
And some of those young women were going through things I never
I see.
had to go through. I was just appalled at some of the things. So we talked about dealing with that. And feeling like, I think a lot of times young people, especially women, feel like if it's someone older, that's my elder. I can't say I can't. It's like, no, they're a human being. And we all got our stuff, so no is no. So we talk about that. We talk about ways to deal with it, who to talk to. And we try to always leave our like they can always call us. All the faculty and talk to us, and we try to figure out ways to help them. So it's that sisterhood of just passing it on so they know they always have big sisters to come to.
Thank you. And all of your sisters too, for creating that community.
It's important. Yeah.
Well, there's so much that needs to continue to heal, and so much more awareness that needs to come upon all of us, but it takes these leaders like yourself to be willing to talk about it and bring it in the open and say, okay, let's heal, let's heal and bring this to the music.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, a lot of times we have these discussions with women. And my thing was like, we need to have these conversations with the young men in the room as well, so that they understand, that behavior, because they're mimicking someone that they saw, but that behavior is not cool.
Yeah, and the men need to heal from this too, just as much as the women, because it's a wound on both sides that creates, these issues.
Yeah.
It's a wound on both sides. And then, everybody deals with it and manifests it in different ways.
Therapy, jazz therapy.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Hey, what I want to ask you about is Wynton Marsalis. When you joined that incredible project, tell me about that whole process, because that was like a whole era of music, and it's such a such a beautiful story and awareness, and then the music is so amazing, and just working with another jazz master.
When he called me up originally to do a performance in New York, and I couldn't do it because I was already booked with another band. And I could have gotten a sub for that gig, but they said no. He should have called you first. And my mother said, "Well, you already accepted that gig. You have to stick with it." And so I did. And I said, if that opportunity ever comes again, I'm taking it. I don't care what. I think I was, and there was a reason I was so angry about anyway, but I was like, really? You all could have let me out of this gig. But so when he called the next time, I said, I'm taking it. And so he sent the piece to me, told me started to tell me what the piece was about. And the whole thing was like 2 hours long, but my part was only about 3 minutes, literally, in that. And just trying to understand the story and what my piece of it was.
Yeah.
Freedom, not just freedom thinking as a slave, but your own freedom, freeing yourself from mental things that keep us bound up, just being free from all these things. And so it was a celebratory moment in this really heavy piece. And so each night I was like, I'm gonna extend this a little bit more, because I was like, I don't want to just be here for 2 or 3 minutes. But it was interesting because at first he'd say, no, that's not and trying to understand the way Wynton talks about music, sometimes it's very, I don't know if it's esoteric, but you have to try to figure out what it is he's trying to get at.
Yeah.
And then, so it took me a few nights of playing it to understand where he was coming from.
That's interesting. I would think that he's so clear and so articulate about everything that it would be more direct, his directions or instructions.
Yeah, but I think the feel he wanted, or what he felt he wasn't getting from me. So he needed to.
Yeah.
So we sat down and talked, and he told me, this is what this piece is about, and this is what this is. And once he went into it in depth, then I said, okay. Then I understood musically what he was looking for.
When you were talking about freedom, reminded me of a book that I read recently, and it was this guy that was caught trafficking drugs in Europe, and he didn't even know that he had the drugs, but he was sent to prison for, I don't know how long the term was, for 12 years, and was put in prison. And he said it took being in prison for him to be set free, because that's where he freed himself from his mind. That's where he freed himself from his heart and actually went inside, to find that source, right? That's really, instead of going out to try and find the freedom, he went inside to find the freedom. And this is a little bit further than the antidote that I'm sharing, but he found that in prison, found the freedom in prison. And then, of course, very soon after that, after he found that place in himself, they let him out early.
Wow, that's heavy.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a real story, and I think we could all find examples like that where we those moments where we surrender, to okay, this is the circumstance. If it's completely uncontrollable, and then how do you gain control of it by surrendering? It's like this weird dichotomy, right?
Because we don't have, we always think we have control.
Yes.
There have been
Yes.
plenty of times where I'm like, okay, God, I got this. You can go help someone else. I got this. And it's like, and I just imagine and say, okay, let's see what you got.
Crystal. Got it. Okay, so here you are now. You've played with everybody. You've accomplished so many wonderful projects and visions, and I mean, as far as I can see from the outside, you've certainly created a lot already. And I'm just curious now, like what are you looking toward? What keeps the fire burning? I know you're teaching a lot, and that seems to be a priority for you as well as everything else. But what you got
I
cooking?
always run from teaching. I was like, I don't want to
Yeah?
teach. I'm not a good teacher. I don't want to do this. And then someone will say, "Oh, hi, I'm like the young lady today," and here I am giving her my.
Yep.
Reach out to me. I'll.
Yeah, I saw that.
It's just, it's funny. I just, in my head, what I think a teacher or what I think something is. I get into the rules.
Wow.
Of, you don't do this and you don't do that, so you're not a teacher.
You're too free thinking to fit in any boxes, Regina.
Well, I
Yeah.
just, it's always that energy, that back and forth. But you know what my life, when my mom passed away, um, in 2005, and I was with her like months before at the house, basically living at the hospital. And I canceled all my gigs to be there. And I had one gig I was supposed to leave, and I had everybody set up to come and be with her until I got back. And her doctor finally said, I used to say to him, "Is she gonna live? Is she gonna live? Is she gonna die?" And he was like, "I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know." And finally he said to me, "She won't be here when you come back." And so I said, "I'm not going." And so the people that I canceled the gig, they sued me, and the lawsuit lasted a year.
I remember this
And
story. Yeah.
it was just horrendous. It's just after burying her, like it's just having to deal with that, and it consumed my life. And so from that, and from the anger from that and everything, and from being with her, spending that time, I thought I wanted to be a music therapist. And so a school, Western Michigan University, set up an online course for me to take an intro course. And I flew out 4 times during the year, and I would shadow other music therapists. And I found that I loved going into hospice, the hospice centers. And it was just something so centering for me.
Huh.
And I said, this is what I want to do. So I didn't go into music therapy, but I trained to be a hospice volunteer. So my first patient, I waited for a while. I got my call, and they said, "Oh, we have a patient for you." And I wanted the elderly generation. I just felt like a lot of times they didn't have families to come visit them. And I wanted people that lived alone so they'd have a visitor. And so my first patient, her name was Grace.
There's a synchronicity right there.
And
Wow.
she was just as cantankerous as my mother. So I was
Really?
an old Italian woman. I was like, wow.
No kidding.
Yeah. And we got to be really, her family, we were really close.
Mhm.
But after I started traveling a lot, and they wouldn't have, the hospice center didn't have people to go in when I wasn't there. So I call from the road and
Mm.
check in. But after all my patients passed away, I stopped doing it for a while. But I just finished my training to be an end of life doula. And so that gives me, that's for me what's fueling my music now. It's
Wow.
it's a very, I don't know how to explain it, but it's a calling. It's definitely a calling.
And you haven't felt that calling till now? Had you had hints of it earlier in your life?
No,
Huh.
no. I've always been obsessed with death,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that was because when I was 8, one of my childhood friends passed away,
Mm.
and I didn't understand what that meant. And your parents, my mom would say, "Oh, he's sleeping, and he'll wake up," and she said, "And his soul is going to go to heaven." And I thought at the funeral, like I was waiting to see his soul come up out of.
Yeah.
I thought I was going to see like this ghost. I kept looking,
Well, soon enough, I'm sure.
you know. And so I've always had this curiosity, and I don't know if that led to this
Yeah.
or what, but I just there's something about being with people that, I mean, we're all leaving here.
Yeah.
As Carlos says, none of us are getting out of here alive, But just sitting with someone that knows that their days are numbered here, and all that they think about, and it's almost like, for me, it's a connection into that next world.
Yes. Absolutely. Tell me more about that. Like what I mean, how so what have you learned with the people that you have helped transition?
I haven't
Not
started
yet.
yet. I just
Okay.
finished my training,
Yeah, yeah.
so
So you're just about to get into all of this.
yeah, yeah,
Woo! And that's going to just completely deepen your whole experience as a human being.
yeah.
It's
I think,
connecting you to this whole other place.
yeah, because with all the stuff that is going on in our world, and
Yeah.
it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's like I don't think sci-fi movies can keep up with the reality
Fair
anymore.
enough.
you
Yeah.
know? And so
Yeah.
I just sometimes just need something and dying is about as real as it gets.
And that is the quote that needs to be right at the top of your website, right there. That's it. That's my takeaway from today with you. All right. Regina, thank you so much.
Thank
I
you.
love this. I love this. So we're gonna do another podcast after you've been doing this for a while,
Okay.
or at least I'm gonna give you a call and see what's going on.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I'm it's I never, who knows. And I when I first decided I wanted to do hospice work, and after I felt guilty. Like I felt like you're only supposed to play music. You're only supposed to want to play music and be on stage.
Ooh.
And I
Oh.
felt so guilty, and
Huh.
Carla said to me, "No, we all have many gifts and many callings. You don't have
Yes.
to just do one thing all the
Hmm.
time."
Yeah.
So again, someone had to give me permission
Hmm.
to.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, thank goodness, these people are there to, provide a mirror for
Hmm.
ourselves to just see it back and go, oh yeah, right. Okay. I can do anything.
Yeah.
There's nothing you can't do. And then you put in the time, and put the dedication into it, and you know what the purpose is, you know what the mission is, and nothing can stop you.
Yeah.
Nothing.
And that's how you see if you really, is that what you really want?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
easy to dream. It's easy to say.
Hmm.
I always say I have a shoebox full of ideas.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Well, that's the big separator. A lot of people have lots of great ideas, but who's going to put the blood, sweat, and tears into making it happen?
hmm
And really go through all the hard times and the resistance and the constraints it's like,
yeah, we all got a cross to
yeah,
bear.
yeah, I think so. All right. Yeah, I'll take
And
a
on
breath
that note,
too. Yeah. No, this is really wonderful.
thank you.
Thank you for your integrity and your humility and your passion and your dedication and your time and your spirit
Oh,
and your
jeez.
joy and your
Oh, you're making me embarrassed.
it's true. That's what I see. Mhm.
Thank you. It's so funny. I remember we hadn't met yet, but I knew we were going to be working together when you won the Grammy. And I texted you. Did I text you, or maybe I didn't have your number? No, I sent an IG message
Hmm.
congratulating you. And
Hmm.
it was just like, and I don't even know why I went there, but sometimes
Yeah.
I want to do something like that, and I'm going to write it, and I'll stop myself.
Mm.
Because I'll say, oh, that person is going to think you're weird, or they're going to think this, or they're going to think, and then I don't do it. And I'm trying
Mm.
to like let that first instinct, my very natural instinct, go. And so I was so glad I did that.
Yeah.
Then and that we ended up working together, and then today this is exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're about to go do a master class and go share with everybody else, and just, you never know what that spark is that sends somebody off that goes, I never thought about it that way.
Yeah.
Maybe I can do what I really want to do.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go do it.
All right.
Thank you,
Thank
Regina.
you.
Much gratitude, everyone, for checking out the podcast. Please just subscribe and follow and like and add a comment, as it really helps us expand and grow and keep us all connected together. So I appreciate it very much, and I send you much, much, much love. I'll see you on the next one.